Welcome everyone to the Coaching to Flourish podcast. I am your host, John. Today I have Bre with me, and Bre, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here.
I want to go into your background, Bre, for all of our listeners and people watching. So Bre, you are currently the executive director of Doretha Pressey Foundation, Southern Scholars. And the idea is that you help young people who wouldn't normally have access to education like this, get access, get into college, and you've helped 4 people, 60,000 in this past year, and you have another 4 coming up.
Yes, that's right.
And you're trained, you went through the Academic Life Coach program. In what year? And who are your trainers?
Just last year. And my trainers were the amazing Islam. Teresa was also a trainer. Awesome. And of course, Raj was amazing. So yeah.
It's an amazing team. I feel like if you put like a Venn diagram of people who are into life coaching and people who are into education, the middle part there, these people, we're changing the world.
Yes.
So Bre, so your background, so hearing all this out loud, here's where you are at. Like, this is the impact. What's it like to be here on the podcast?
I'm so nervous. So, but other than that, I'm truly, truly grateful for the opportunity. Thank you so much. I'm usually a background type of person. So it's appropriate that a coaching engagement would get me to come out of my shell and do something like this. So I'm really honored. As you mentioned, we started the Dr. Doretha Pressey Southern Scholars Initiative to honor my mother, who was a brilliant, beautiful educator who loved students and loved everyone really, and loved giving back and helping others. And she passed away very unexpectedly at the end of 2018. And so my family and I founded Southern Scholars to honor her memory. I think initially we thought that we would just give scholarships to kids from our community of Denmark, South Carolina, which is my hometown, a very rural, small, low-income community in South Carolina. So we just thought we'd give them, checks to get into school, and that would be that. But we quickly learned that kids need a lot more than just money to get to and through college. And so we decided to build a whole program to support our kids. And for me, it was really critical that we include coaching as a major component of our program. So I'm really, really excited that we got the opportunity to work with you and your amazing team.
It's so amazing. It's we were just talking just minutes before we made this thing go live about how education is the great equalizer. It is the thing that can change the trajectory of generations. What's been your experience with
in terms of
your own education and how it's changed your trajectory?
Yeah, so I was very, very fortunate. Like I said, I was born and grew up in this small little town in South Carolina. I went to school there for kindergarten and then booked out of there when my family moved to Massachusetts. And then I was in like private schools and top of the line schools. Like I graduated from Montgomery County in Maryland, which is one of the top districts in the country. So I was really fortunate to have that experience. And then I went on to great colleges, Columbia, NYU. And so I know what it is to be a woman of color at a predominantly white institution. And I know what it is to be a person of privilege and to have had those opportunities. And so when I look back at the students in my hometown and I see that they are just as brilliant, just as committed to making a great life for themselves, but they just don't have the opportunity. It's like, well, how can we not help and give back? And so that's why we're really honored to have the opportunity to work with so many amazing kids through Southern Scholars and to honor my mom's memory, because I feel like she would be doing the exact same thing.
It's amazing. Just listening to your energy and hearing you talk, like it's just so like it makes my heart sing. Like there's an element of like, this is like there is progress. I know it's there's a lot there to unpack, but just the whole general thing is wow. So Amoyce and I went to Brown. We met at Brown. We were college sweethearts and we got married, and we've been married now for, 17 years. It's been a while. And she's Latina, and her experience in college, also at Brown, is very different in a lot of ways from mine. What what do you feel like is important for people to understand about your, like, what it's like to go through college as someone who's yeah, I mean, African American, and having to deal with, yeah, you're in Columbia, you're in NYU, but you know, you're still having to deal with all of the other stuff.
Yeah. I thank you for that question. I was really thinking hard about that this morning. You know, it's really hard, John, just to be a Black person in this country. It's a hard thing, and I think that it kind of gets swept under the rug because we all kind of know that it's difficult. But when you really think about, like, okay, so I'm expected to go to class every day, do well in my classes, apply for internships, and do all these normal things that college kids do. But I also have to deal with the daily weight of knowing that there are so many people out there in the world that hate me on my college campus just because of the way I look. And to deal with the burden of racism. And, you know, I talk to my students all the time about, like, the events that happened this past summer, and just seeing bodies of people that look like me, that look like my uncles, my father, that look like me on the ground being murdered by people that are supposed to take care of us and protect us. Like, it's a heavy, hard, difficult thing to deal with every single day, you know? I think that what helps is the beauty and the remarkable spirit of my people, of Black people, of lots of people, but I can speak specifically about my experience, and just knowing that despite all of that, perhaps because of all that, we make an effort to, I was listening to another panel, and a brilliant young man in the world of the arts talked about Black joy. And I couldn't agree more. It's that the joy that saves us, the hope for something better in the future that keeps us moving forward. But to answer your question, it's not easy. It takes a lot of effort and discipline to get through it. And and that's another reason why I was interested in coaching, because I wanted my scholars to always know that they had someone there with them to help guide them through the journey of higher education.
Right. Right. I mean, I think it's, I mean, even at Brown, they had a program that was meant to, I don't know, they called it third world transition, which now, I mean, this is back in the early 2000s. They've since changed that name for obvious reasons. But it was meant for people of color to go to, like, to have a basically a experience on a workshop. Like, they went there for, I think, 3 or 4 days earlier than everyone else, and got to bond, and then the rest of the students came. Amoyce went to that. I did not. They didn't. It was not for white people, but I feel like they should have done the opposite, where had like awareness and race training for white people to understand what is going on. Like, hey, you know, wake up. I feel like a lot of that's happened this past summer. What was your experience with how you felt like the understanding shifted?
Um, it's hard to say. I mean, I think that there was lots of, like, immediate reaction, and everyone saw what was going on, and everybody wanted to immediately do the right thing. And so we saw these brands and companies come out with all
Right.
these diversity initiatives, which is great. You know, it's really fantastic. But I think for me, for a lot of my friends, were like, okay, this is cool, but what happens next? And how long will this last? And are you just doing this to be a part of this moment? Or are you willing to make the necessary changes that will actually affect change in our world? And so I think that what was great about the moment over the summer was that so many people were mobilized. It wasn't just Black people, it wasn't just poor people, it wasn't just Latino people. It was everybody all around the world that said, this is wrong and we need to do something about it. So I feel like it was a wake-up call, but I'm wondering, now that we're awake, what are we going to do?
Right. Like, progress looks promising, but we have to wait and see if it's going to stick and last, and what what shifts and doesn't shift.
Exactly.
I mean, I think I've said this, I think, almost every week, I feel like, on the podcast. Uh, and especially when we talk about race, it frightens me as a white person to know what my experience was lacking growing up.
Mm,
And only until after I met a Moise and saw the world through her eyes did I understand, whoa, that's scary to me.
mm.
Because I feel like there is a huge gap in empathy and understanding. Where What do you see as next? Like, if you could paint like the next best, let's say the understanding of most people progressed. Where do you see the next step in that progression going?
Um, if I could paint, if I could
Yes,
paint
that's
it,
the question. You got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
We're in the space.
I think that it really takes making major changes in legislation,
Mhm.
and in the way that this country is run. I mean, when you think about education, a lot of people say, oh, the educational system is so broken. It's not broken. It's designed to do exactly what it does, which is to keep a certain segment of the population in control and in power, and to make sure that the other segments of the population do not attain that power. So, are we really talking about making changes? Because if so, that means dismantling these systems of oppression, or at least like critically evaluating them and seeing what needs to be changed and making those changes instead of, talking about it or creating all these study like for reparations, for instance. Congress is having like yet another conversation about should we even have a conversation, or should we even begin to study this idea of reparations. And I mean, I'm not saying if I'm for or against, but I'm just saying, like, we're past the time of having conversations. Like, it's time to take some action if we really want to see real change.
Right. I view education as the vehicle for that. And,
Yeah.
you're looking at even the creation of like school districts and things like that, which are designed specifically to keep privilege in certain areas and keep privilege out of other areas. I mean, there's some
Hmm.
pretty significant things that we as a society have to look at,
Right.
that I don't see happening in the next couple decades. I mean, it
Me
just
either,
feels like,
sadly.
I know, um, but
But I will say that I feel like this next generation coming up, I mean, they're so with it and savvy and engaged, and they are ready for change. I mean, and
Mhm.
when I talk to my scholars, I'm just like so blown away by how motivated and engaged and intelligent they are. And I feel like if anybody can really make real change in the world, it's these kids coming up after us. So it's up to us to make sure that they have those tools to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, so we have a 13-year-old and a 11-year-old, two older girls and two younger boys,
Mhm.
and our girls are such powerhouses. Oh my goodness. Oh goodness. It's like she's already saying stuff like, both of my parents are life coaches, or stuff like that. So to give
Mhm.
her cover for her very coachy stuff that she says on all of her classes and things.
That's great. I can imagine she must be like
Gosh.
so cool to be around in school. Like,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
It's a different paradigm. It's a paradigm that emphasizes kindness over knowledge. It doesn't mean that
Right.
knowledge is not necessary, but kindness needs to come first. And if
Mm.
there's kindness in the space, there's trust built, there's safety, then that's the best way to gather knowledge. It seems that we're, still reeling from centuries of um, just having to deal with stuff as a society that we have not dealt with.
Mhm.
I mean, even looking back, well, I've been studying systems theory, doing a lot of research on this stuff, looking even at concepts, that were created around the 1600s and how they played out over the, centuries.
Right.
Um, yeah, we have a lot of work to do, but I feel really like our this younger generation absolutely is amazing. Like
Yeah.
they have they are more with it and connected than ever. But this is also true. Whenever paradigms shift, then other people can open up. Like,
Mhm.
internet happens, then we're using Google Docs, not Microsoft Word anymore.
Mhm.
What How do you, because I feel like there's a lot of energy and like a lot of excitement too. Like this next
Mhm.
generation might look different, or this next view of education looks different. How do you see that? Or what do you see as the difference in this like how education will look or the opportunities here?
Oh my gosh. I'm really curious, John. I think about it often. I wonder if like these brick and mortar buildings, if these Ivies
Right.
are going to still continue to carry the same weight for students. So many students are just like, they can go and get a full class on like Khan Academy or whatever and like take courses at Harvard from there. And especially now that everything is virtual. So I wonder if that will help to kind of level the playing field a little bit in terms of higher education. I'm certainly hopeful that it will. But I think that there's lots of other ways that this younger generation will disrupt our whole notion of what it means to be educated. And it's not just about like learning in a huge classroom at a big institution. What do you
No,
think?
yeah, right. We're in it. So we use OutSchool a lot for stuff,
Hmm.
which is, I mean, you could take a class on anything, and we have homeschooled before this whole pandemic happened. Uh, and so it felt like, we've worked from home, we work remote. Coach Train EDU is 100% remote.
Hmm.
We do remote training. Our girls are both homeschooled. They do a lot of their
Hmm.
things remote. Uh, I think the whole paradigm has shifted, and
Yeah.
the thing. So two things are going to happen. One is that um, more students are going to access online learning than before.
Hmm.
We're going to shift back to in-person models, but not. It won't go back to the way it was. There'll be more
Hmm.
people who stay online than before.
Hmm.
What that does is, I feel like it gives opportunities for people who have a course to teach more specialized courses.
Mm.
Like our daughters are learning. They took Paloma, the 13-year-old. She took speeches, important speeches by African Americans in the past 100 years from a
Wow.
professor. I think a professor at Rutgers, and
Wow.
she's 13. And
That's
she's in a
amazing.
Zoom class with like 12 people. I mean, and they're looking at like really like amazing stuff,
That's so cool.
right? And that's
But
just
what
we're
that
in, we're in Oregon. Like what? How is that happening? Yeah,
but then this idea of access still comes up, right? Because
that's it.
our work is in a really rural area of the country. And when most people think of rural communities, they think of like the Midwest and farmland. But no, we're in a very small rural community in South Carolina, and broadband access is very, very, very limited. We had to scramble to provide broadband access for our students when everything went remote. So, even though there's all these opportunities, who's going to get left behind? And I fear that it will continue to be those that have been left behind.
That is exactly it. That's the thing
Yeah,
that scares me the most, is that the pandemic is adversely hurting the people who are the most vulnerable.
exactly.
And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. And how do we do it? You know, yeah, no, it's a huge problem.
Hmm.
But I think it's one that, I mean, I do think it will shift. I think we have about another decade of pain, and then I think with
Yeah.
the technology is going to catch up. That most people, if they want to get connected, can get connected.
Hmm.
The issue then I see is not so much external knowledge, but internal knowledge.
Mm.
Like um, how do you provide a level of support when sometimes it feels like um, the assumptions made by certain classrooms or teachers feel like, okay, this support's it's not even going to be that great, or like, why is it going to be worth it, or am I going to get burned again, or is this going to be something that I just feel like, oh no, not this again.
Mm.
I've done some presentations at low income schools, and there seems to be such, like, students have such barriers, such walls put
Hmm.
up almost immediately.
Hmm.
uh, how do you, as an academic life coach, like how do you manage those walls, and then how do you manage the overwhelming need for support with the capacity to give it?
Whew, great question.
Right.
Um, I think you know, one of the major things that I learned from my training as a coach is trust, right? It's one of the first things that we were taught is trust in the process, trust in your client, and trust in yourself, right? So, and one of the things that Islam and Raj were really, really good about was helping me to trust that I was capable and able to do this work. And so when I go into a difficult situation, I have to, I guess, hone in on that and really trust myself and know that whatever is required in this moment, in this situation, to support the student, I have, right?
Mhm.
And so when you go in with that helps a lot. And then trust the process, but also trust the client. There are so many times when I want to tell my students, do it this way. Like, trust me, I know this is the way that you need to do it. But we had a student this past semester who um, ended up working way more hours than I wanted him to work. And I thought that it would be detrimental to his grades. But he was like, look, I got it. Trust me, trust
That's
me. And
awesome.
so that clicked for me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to trust you. And he ended up getting his highest GPA to date. So when to try to answer your question, I think it's about being very realistic about the barriers um, that my students have to face and what, you know, we as a society are facing, but also knowing that like this small part that I'm playing in their lives, it will make a difference ultimately. And I can trust them to gain what they need to gain from the situation.
Wow. It's got to feel like there's such a mountain to climb. And how do you sustain yourself in that daily grind?
I talk to my mom a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like she's always with me. Every don't make me cry, John. But every major decision, I'm always like asking for her wisdom and her guidance to get me through. My grandmother, who was my mom's mom, passed away 3 weeks after my mom passed away. So I feel like I have, and we've also named a scholarship to honor her because although she never even got her high school diploma, but you know, she had 8 kids and she made sure that every single one of them graduated from high school. The majority of them have their undergraduate degrees and
Wow.
master's degrees. My mom had her doctorate degree. So I lean on them a lot. And then of course the entire community, my family, friends, my partner, you know, so I lean on them, but I also just looking at my scholars and looking at all the other kids in these communities and knowing that like if they're just given the opportunity and given the support, they will succeed. They're not getting
Mhm.
into the schools because they're not capable. It's just because of the way that the system is set up. Our kids right now, every one of them has more a 3.0 GPA or higher. One of our scholars who's planning to become a physician earned a 4.0 GPA her very first semester during a pandemic, mind you. Their average GPA is 3.8. So they're rock stars. They're amazing. Two of them are at predominantly white institutions. Two of them are at HBCUs, and they're both doing
Um,
an amazing job. So, or there, all four of them are. So when I look to them, that's what gives me strength to keep going.
I remember those client sessions where I thought, dealing with the weight of the world, and then I get into a client session and get one-on-one and go empathetic for a little bit.
Hmm.
And it just felt like this complete break from everything else.
Yeah,
Like
exactly,
I didn't have to worry about a thing. I could just be there 100% for them. And
exactly.
I think it's hard to explain, I don't know, the emotional recharge, or I don't know what it is. What's the
Yeah,
word for it? There's got
I
to be a
think
good word for it.
I agree with
Yeah.
you. It's hard to explain. It's just like when you're in it, like it's it's an amazing thing to be welcomed into someone's life in that way.
What I found working with students is once you break through that shell, then they want to almost overshare. They want
Hmm.
to say, like, here's all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it's really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's beautiful about the coaching model is that it doesn't say that us as coaches have to know what to do with that. We just have to be with it.
Yes.
It feels like a lot of what our society on a macro level needs to do as well,
Mm-hmm.
around the ideas around, like, there needs to be a simple be with the pain, be with
Right.
the understanding, like just
Right.
be with, you don't have to make it immediately better or make it, feel like minimize it or, over dramatize, just be with.
See, and that's what makes me a little bit hesitant about what happened during this moment over the summer. It's because everybody was so quick to react and like
Right.
put out a statement. And it's like you're saying, like, let's actually sit with it. Let's sit with what like 400 years of oppression has done,
Right.
and what it's still doing. Like, are we actually taking the moment to acknowledge that? And if so, then I think that we could have a much better outcome. But if we're just like looking at it and saying, oh, this is horrible, let me put out a statement and make these superficial changes, then what's really going to change?
Thinking back, looking historically at pandemics, and historically after a pandemic, there's a cultural flourishing that's
Mm,
happening. And um, I think that something similar is going to happen. I feel the shift,
mm,
um, but it's not everywhere.
it's
You know,
not
not everywhere.
at all. Right.
Gosh, but it is some places, and
And I think
that's
it's a lot
yeah.
of places, John. I
Hmm.
think yeah. So I'm very hopeful, like you, that this will be the moment or one of those moments where we have a great shift, a great awakening, not only in our culture, but like just in humanity in general, where we're ready to move past all of this nonsense and division and come together. So,
I was just thinking about last night. My yeah, I'm just thinking like how oh, what was it? Amos has been listening, going back. We live about a mile away, an hour away from Portland. So
okay.
sometimes the girls have acting class and, take the trip in every now and then. But they've been doing it mostly online too, which is amazing. But they
That's
listened to
cool.
the Good Night Story for Rebel Girls
Hmm.
to and from Portland on podcasts. And they were telling me, we're talking about this story of the little girl in Montgomery who was the first one to go to the school.
Hmm.
And I forget, her name's escaped me at the moment.
Me too. Yeah.
Who is that? I know. I'll
You
find it
should Google
here.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, Google it. Who is that? I should probably Google her name before I launch into the story. But it was, I mean, she was amazing. Are you kidding me? Like, so it's even that story. There are details of the story that are useful to know,
Right.
because they would make people feel bad if known. Like, so it wasn't
Hmm.
like they just picked 6 random African Americans. No, they had to pass a test
Right.
that they made impossible to pass.
Right.
But then 6 people did it. She's one of the
Right.
6 people who did it.
Right.
And so by law, they had to let her get in there.
Hmm.
And every day, she had to endure people saying the most hateful things to her.
Right.
And then one day she stopped and just looked at them and mumbled something and kept going. And the marshals who were having to look at her, or, look after her, said, what are you doing? Like, they took her to the principal. Like, why? That's not safe. Like, just get in there. And she said, well, I was praying for them.
Wow.
And she said, I usually pray for them on the way over, on the car ride over, but I forgot.
Wow.
And so I stopped and had to
Wow.
pray for them. And that blows my mind, for her to get to that point. And I think at the root of it is that the people who are filled with hate, they do themselves just as much damage, but they don't see it. They don't know it.
More damage. I would say way more damage. I did not know that story, but it doesn't surprise me at all. You know, I think that just like Black joy has been critical to us as a people making it this far, faith and, you know, a commitment to do that, to be kind and to not let like that insidious like racism get to us. Like one barrier against that, it has always been our faith in God and the ability to pray for our enemies. You know, for they know not what they do, because what they're actually doing is harming themselves way more than they're harming us. Baldwin always talks about that, how like racism hurts the racist far more than it hurts the people that they're attacking. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But thank you for sharing that story because I wasn't aware of it.
It's amazing, right? Like, are you
Yeah.
kidding me? I'm gonna look our name up right now. I'm gonna look it
Okay,
up right
cool.
now. I gotta find it. You know, it's amazing like being a. Do you have little ones?
No,
No.
I don't.
Well, you're sleeping. Like if you get like sleep.
Yes. Yes.
With no sleep, it just goes out. Like it's like, oh, especially like proper nouns, you know, like I can't keep those in my head sometimes.
Yeah.
We got a puppy too. We got a over like because they
Oh,
always wanted one. It's so the girls are getting old enough that they can take care of it. It's amazing. Our Georgiana, our second oldest, she's taking puppy training. They're doing online puppy training, like
are
dog
you
training
serious?
online. Yeah. Yeah,
I've
it's just
never
like
even heard of that.
once a week, she does dog training. This dog is amazing. It does
So cool.
release. It's like 4 months old. It does a release.
What kind of
Stay
dog is
on.
it?
She's having the, here, I'll do a screen share. You see her a little bit. Yeah. Here, I'll show you. Do a screen share. There she is.
Oh, so
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, very
So
cute.
she's like a little fluff ball. Yeah.
My little sister has a little Maltese, and my partner has a black lab. So I love dogs, but I hadn't heard of the online training. I might need to look into that.
It's pretty awesome because she's doing it. Like she's actually doing it.
Cool.
Let's see if I can find her name. It doesn't say who.
Are we talking about Claudette Colvin? No, right? I feel
Maybe.
like, or is it?
I'll get it in a minute. I'll look at it right after this and I'll put it in the thing. I don't want to take too much time, but I really want to get her name.
Okay.
I'll get her name. I'll get her name.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I feel like there's such an internal resistance that you have to build up too. Like, you know what I mean? Like you just, I want to say like, it's not something that I think you get used to as much as you adapt to in order to be able to just make it through.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of coaching skills and coaching tools, like what are some of the coaching tools that you find you use most in your life?
In my personal life?
Or professional? Yeah.
Oh, wow. Definitely listening. I thought I was a good listener. Like I used to pride myself on being a good listener. And then when I got into coaching and Islam was like, like this is what deep listening actually is. So I definitely try to use that as much as possible. The trusting is huge for me. I'm always working on like trying to trust myself more in situations. And then I love like all kinds of tools like Future Self is my favorite. And I love using that with our scholars, Wheel of Life, obviously. Yeah, but there's so many great tools that I gained from the experience. By the way, I've been wanting to thank you because our cohort was very unique in that we went through the start of COVID together. So we all went through lockdown together. We experienced the uprisings together. But because of COVID, I was very concerned about the money coming into our organization. I didn't want to like take away any funds from scholarship dollars. So I was ready to withdraw from the course. But Matt reached out to me, one of Coach Training EDU's amazing team members, and he reached out and he said, no, you know, your class wants you to be there, so we're offering you the scholarship. So thank you so much for doing that, because it was, I mean, it was literally life-changing for me to be able to have that experience during that time. I was also very much still deep into grief, and one of my other classmates was also grieving. And so we were able to bond over that. And I made genuine friends in that course. I feel that Islam is a friend that I'll have for life. And Rosh is someone that I'll always look up to. So thank you for the scholarship and for the opportunity.
It's an honor, really, truly, to be in a position to be able to keep you. I remember the conversations around learning about your organization and, you know, what are we going to do as a leadership team, and it was really an easy decision, frankly.
Thank you so much, John. Really,
it's like, of course. Are you? Yes, of course. Like, let's make this, you know, let's make this happen. I mean, I think it's also, I mean, part of the larger mission of what we're up to as an organization.
Yeah.
Like, it is exactly aligned for us as an organization to help help organizations like you and the Southern Scholars do what you do. Yeah. Like, this is it. And part of what I saw, like, when in the position that I was in, I mean, I studied Greek and Latin at Brown. Like, that's so dorky. And you know what I mean? It's so nerdy. It's like, you know, I know like what umlaut and, you know, different accent marks are in Greek, right? That's how, yeah, that's how far down that rabbit hole I went. And, you know, there were times when, so then I met Amois, then we found coaching. I was teaching Latin at the time. She got into coaching first, but I thought this is really going to change the face of education.
I agree.
That's it.
I agree.
And if we're really going to have an impact on society, let's change education. And so I feel like there's a big opportunity here in the education space to further equalize it. But it's going to take a tremendous amount of work. But anytime there's a huge shift, there are opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way I look at it. But no, Bre, yours is exactly aligned to what we want to support. What, like, looking at it, the ideas of, you know, even in coach training itself, like the kinds of friends you make there, what was the most surprising thing about the coach training experience for you?
That I cried like every week. Awesome. I was shocked that I was so open and vulnerable in my class. Like from the jump, like I think we were all just really open. I think that says a lot about our instructor, Islam, and Teresa as well, when she came in to sub. But there was just such a feeling of safety. There was no judgment. It was just like a really beautiful space to be in. And especially, like I said, during that time when we were all feeling all these different emotions. So that shocked me. I really thought, okay, I'm gonna learn how to be a coach. And like, I didn't think that it would be so emotionally involved.
Oh, it changes everything. I feel like being able to listen empathetically, like active empathetic listening, it changed my life. It fundamentally changed my life.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was a good listener. I thought I was an okay listener, not amazing. But now I know, yeah, I can listen. I can really listen. And I feel like there's such power in that too. I mean, and it feels like we don't really have a good vocabulary for describing all the aspects that come up when you do lean that far into listening.
I agree.
Like I literally remember like where I was sitting when like empathetic listening like first made sense to me. What were, like, if you had to break down even your insights around listening, like what were the major milestones in that insight?
I think it was honestly because I studied psychology, and I went to London and started a PhD program. Like I really intended on becoming a psychologist. And so, and my friends always told me that I was a great listener, and they loved talking to me. So for me, it was really understanding that the type of listening that I was doing before was cool, but I think I just had to break this barrier of like feeling like I was already a great listener and understanding that there was a deeper level of listening. So once I was able to break that and then actually like, take a breath and actually witness it and feel what it felt like, when I was one-on-one with one of my classmates, and also being listened to that
Right.
deeply. Oh my goodness, it really, it changed everything. And it's different than being in therapy, I think. Um, I don't know how, but it's like a different thing when you're being listened to by a coach for some reason. Do you find that? I don't know.
Totally, 100% yes.
Okay.
But it's hard to tell therapists that, and I think and I also think that, I mean, but therapists also know. I mean, I think therapists and coaches. The relationship is symbiotic. It's not
Hmm.
like one
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
taking away clients from the other.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like both of them have uses, but uh, people who have psychology therapy backgrounds often come in and say they have to unlearn what they learned before.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And so they
That's
have
exactly
actually
what it
double
was.
work because you have to
Hmm.
unlearn it, and they often think they're awesome. So
Right.
they come in with their
Right.
PhDs and such. And I go, that's great. That's great. But this is a whole different thing,
Hmm.
and uh, because it is different. Even positive psychologists, like what they do is it's the same kind of thing. They look, but it's in a positive way. So they look for patterns. They
Hmm.
design studies, and they try to get science and do these science that says this is the benefit of this intervention. But still, the expertise in the room is with the positive psychologist. It's not with the person, not the client.
Right.
That's what I love about coaching, is that you don't have to be an expert. You just have to listen and be
Right.
curious. And it's like
Right.
such
And know that
freedom,
your client is the expert.
such freedom. It's like,
I agree.
it's
I
just like,
agree.
why would, what? Like, I get to know less, play more, and have bigger impact. What? Okay.
Yep.
Like, that's
Yep.
what
Yep.
we're doing here. But there is there's a cost to admission though. There are very strict internal, um, patterns, bias,
Hmm.
assumptions, skills that you have to either release or develop. Um,
Right.
yeah, it's a crazy, it's a wild process.
Hmm.
What would be your advice to someone just starting out in their
As a
coach training
coach,
journey? Mm-hmm.
whew, congratulations, first of all. I was going to say go in with an open mind, which is important, but more importantly, go in with an open heart. And, Islam always talked about having a willingness to be vulnerable. And like she would always celebrate when we were willing to be vulnerable. So I think that it's huge. Even when we were practicing, it made a huge difference when people were willing to open up. Um, so I think just be open to the process.
Totally. And how can the coach training EDU community support you? What's the
Oh my gosh, more than you already have. I think, my goal for our organization as we grow is to bring on more coaches. So I obviously want to move forward and get my uh, oh my gosh, what is it? IFC. Is that right?
mm-hmm.
Yes,
ICF?
credential.
Yeah.
ICF, thank you.
Everyone
ICF
does it. I'm
credential.
so used to it. Like,
But then I also want to bring in more coaches, and I would love to have them go through this journey as well, so that they're able to support our scholars.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk. Let's see how we can make that happen.
Awesome.
And we'll put a link to your website and organization here on
Thank
our
you so
website
much,
and bio. Yeah,
John.
in your bio too, for sure. Yeah, I mean
Awesome.
we're getting there. I feel like we have a little bit of a backlog we're creating more content than we're actually able to like put on the website and publish. And we just did a website upgrade and all those kind of fun things that are happening on top of everything else. But we're going to get on top of the blog here and make it work.
Great.
Um, Bre, I'm just thankful for you, what you're doing,
Thank you.
the your whole story, and I'm sure this won't be the last time we'll have you on the podcast. And
Great.
yeah, hope you have a good rest of your week. For those
Thank
listening
you.
live, thank you so much for being here. And for those listening on the recording, thank you for listening. This has been another cast of the Coaching to Flourish podcast. Thanks, everyone.